Hello, YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
It is 2:30 in the morning, and we just got through wrapping up. We just talked about all that happened in college football. There was a lot. Watch it, enjoy it, like, subscribe.
Comment.
Do all those things.
Hey, Brandon.
Hey,
Hi,
Jack.
Brandon.
Hello, Kayce.
Hi,
We
Brandon.
Hello, Katie. I am back.
We are happy you are back.
We are happy. We missed you so much.
Yeah. It was fun going south for our funeral. I'm getting good at it. But let's not worry about any of that. Yes, I was gone for a week. You guys held it down. Thank you very much. I am back. Couldn't miss Jack looks like a rabbit right now with the two white columns coming out of his hip. That's okay. I'm back, and we just had a Saturday of college football.
You're brushing your hair with a pink brush. That's how we know you're back. I will say, Katie.
How you holding up? How you holding up, Smith?
Not good. That's what I was about to say. So Katie, Jack, and I are all in Hoboken. We're spread across. I mean, Katie's obviously in the camera with me. If you're watching it on YouTube, Jack's in the other room. It was an absolute fucking war zone. I wish I could get close enough to this mic. A war zone. We have been here since 11:30 a.m. and boy, am I down bad.
And
I am down so bad.
It is 12:30 a.m. as we speak. So that is how long they have been there. That is 13 hours by my count. Just an all-day war of football. I'm still kind of acclimating myself to being back. I needed a family day because I hadn't seen my family in a week. So I called out of that. So I'm here. Anyway, that's it. I'm back. We got football. Lots to talk about. Y'all ready to go?
Yeah, I would also like it on record that it was not just football, Brandon. It was also the Mets stream. And as we know, that takes years off your life. Let's do a podcast.
That's another reason I didn't come. I didn't want to do that fucking bullshit. We got a day of college football, and people are whining about a little white ball with stitches in it like baseball. Who gives a shit about baseball? We got A&M and Bama playing.
I mean, I'm pretty lifelong Mets fan, but yeah, I still kept up with football.
Right.
Sure. It's been a war. Let's do this.
Let's get down to business. Hello, it is Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast, brought to you by High Noon Hard Seltzer. High Noon has the tailgate pack in stores right now. It is sweeping the country. They have the new flavors, pear and cranberry, along with some old standby flavors, the black cherry and the grapefruit. They also have wonderful flavors throughout the spectrum of the fruit flavoredom. They have tall boys. They've got it all. High Noon, if you haven't heard about it by now, do yourself a service and go get some High Noon. It is the best drink in America. Hi, Kayce Smith.
I wish I could have a High Noon right now.
Yeah, I could understand.
I wish I could.
I could see. We're going to talk about a lot of, and hello, Jack. Hello, Katie. We're going to talk about a lot of teams, a lot of activities, a lot of things that went on today. But one thing people will say when we do these shows is, why do y'all talk about A&M so much? And every week I'm like, well, I hope we don't have to talk about A&M. But every week, guess who's right in the mix? Who's right in the middle of everything? If you look at week 6 of college football, you can't tell the story of week 6 without starting with Alabama and A&M. You just can't. Can't be done.
No, and Brandon, the game ended probably 45 minutes ago to an hour. I don't know. Time is a vortex. I don't even know if that's the right word to use in this place. I still cannot fucking believe that was the play call at the end of the game. And I don't want to hear, Kellen Mond is on Twitter defending it, saying it worked in 2018. It worked earlier in the game, but it was a different defense they were looking at. I do not care. You have Devon Achane, who is an absolute monster running the ball, lined up right there. You have a million different plays you could run. And Jimbo actually called a pretty damn good offensive game, which shocked the hell out of me because it's not happened all year. And that's the play that you run. And not to mention, even if it would have been caught, it wasn't even in the end zone. And I know there was a potential pass interference. I get that. I know Jack's putting out the screenshots, all that. That should never have been the play call to beat the number one team in the country that gave the game to A&M. They did everything they possibly could.
Well, let me defend Jimbo a little bit, okay?
Don't do it. I can't
First of
handle you
all,
right now.
24-20, A&M gives Alabama everything they can handle in what become an annual tradition of A&M losing to somebody like Mississippi State one week and then absolutely giving Alabama the business the next week. I don't know why and how it happens, but it happened. Now, I want to take you through to the last call because I've watched it a couple times and I've realized a couple things about it. Number one, that's not the best call in that situation. You do have A-Chain right there. You have so many things you can do at the 2-yard line that are probably better than that. However, I do think the call itself was exceptionally poorly executed by the players who were doing it. And in theory, it should have worked better than that. The concept is you're selling the fade and you're selling the cornerback that you're going to the back corner of the end zone and you get him on his heels, then you turn quickly and you're in the corner of the end zone and you catch it. The receiver, I believe was Stewart, just rushed everything. He turned too quickly. Haynes King threw it too quickly. It was a poorly executed play, which still, though, and I got to say this, I think the play wasn't as bad of a call as it appeared, but I do think he still left a lot of better calls in the play sheet. Because if I got one chance to beat the number one team in the country, I look around at my offensive roster and say, who is my best guy? And Devin A-Chain is him.
Yeah, probably the guy who was able to dice up one of the best defensive fronts in the country. And I know that there was Alabama is. I know
but no, that's not what I was taking issue with. But I will say this: Evan Stewart grew up a lot tonight. That receiver that they did throw to, he did make that remarkable catch.
Yes.
In the last drive, like he was a good option too, but not the option I would have gone.
This is where the college football or just sports in general really suck you into this, because all day today, not even just today, all week, anybody who was talking about this game, including myself, it was, let's just accept that Nick Saban is going to want to come and kick A&M's doors in. They lost to A&M last year, all the offseason stuff. And by the time this game started, Jack and I were talking about it when we were streaming, Jack was like, I have this weird confidence. And I was like, wait, for A&M to cover the 24 or to win? He was like, I just feel this weird thing happening. By the time the game started, I was fully in. If you would have told me that this game was going to come down to A&M being able to take the lead with 3 seconds left, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours ago, I would have been like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. But because everything that happened with the 2 missed field goals that were just absolute gifts to A&M, the turnovers, everything that went A&M's way, you forget about how bad it was supposed to be and you look at just that play. And I think that's what's so frustrating, because obviously Bryce Young wasn't playing and neither was Max Johnston. You look at all the different things that Haynes King did tonight that we've not seen him do in the past, and the play wasn't executed correctly. You're absolutely right. There was different calls that probably could have gone A&M's way. The fact, though, that was the play call on the biggest stage. You said it yourself, the biggest stage of week 6, which is crazy because it feels like it was 10 years ago that Tennessee and LSU played. You cannot have that play call when all the heat has been on you thus far through 6 weeks.
Doesn't it feel like this is just classic Jimbo at A&M though? Like, yes, Jimbo, just when you want to bury him, just when you want to say, oh my God, you're losing to App State, you're losing to Mississippi State by 1 billion. And then he will have an Alabama on the schedule and he'll either beat them or he'll get right to the breaking point of beating them. And he doesn't. And now I know it doesn't sound fun. I know you don't enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy any moral victories and it stinks. Haynes King grew up tonight. Those receivers grew up tonight. Muhammad's good. Stewart's good. You got A-Chain. Doesn't help you because you lost the game. And it might have said more about Alabama than A&M, but still, A&M, it's a good night for A&M, and it's also a bad night at the same time.
Yeah, no moral victories, but like I said, I would have probably taken this game the way that it went down to literally, quite literally, not the white girl literally, quite literally, the last play of the game. I would have taken this. Obviously, there was, throughout the entire game, I was celebrating a tie at the end of the first quarter. No one should ever celebrate that it's tied, but I was, because everybody, like I said, including myself, expected Alabama to kick their dicks in. And this game is so weird. And you mentioned it just a second ago. It's like there's this weird thing with A&M and Alabama. A&M did it last year where they lose to Mississippi State and lose to Ole Miss, but beat Alabama and beat Auburn. It's like that. It had that same feel tonight. All of those players just grew up. You're absolutely right. They made huge plays when they needed to and capitalized off of Alabama's mistakes that a lot of times this A&M team would not have done in the past.
Well, they also forced a bunch of those mistakes.
Yes. I mean, the defense played out of their minds, and that's something that I can't say enough. A&M's defense deserved, and I know deserved is such like a participation trophy type of word at this point. A&M's defense deserved to win this game. And that punt when the special teams had 12 guys on the field because the guy hadn't quite made it to the sideline, that was heartbreaking to me for A&M's defense because they just kept forcing Alabama to punt and they needed extra time to even be on to rest. So A&M's defense played their asses off, and there's definitely nothing else to say about that. No moral victories. I'm proud of this team. Absolutely proud that it was even down to that last play. This is just the Jimbo Fisher era thus far for A&M, and that's what's frustrating is that A&M, by Vegas standards, by anybody who is not an Aggie fan standards, didn't have business being in this game. They were, and it came down to that last play, and that's a last play that we'll talk about for a very long time.
All right. Now, moving on from A&M, because I think there's a big Alabama element too. I just got to lay everything out. We're going to talk about the big wins today. We're going to talk about Texas. We're going to talk about Tennessee, TCU and Kansas having a whale of a game, UCLA with one of the biggest wins in recent school history. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, like we always do. It's all coming. Everything that happened in week 6, it's coming. But there is an Alabama element to this too. And nobody's immune to the disease of having a backup quarterback in the game. Jalen Milroe at Arkansas last week looked like he was fantastic, and he was just as good as Bryce Young, and he could break off these plays. Well, guess what? When the defense got stronger and the lights got brighter, he was remarkably average tonight. And Alabama's got a lot of big games in their future. If Bryce Young doesn't get back, look out. I mean, they were that close to losing a game at home against a team that they should be handling pretty easy. And further, it's one of my most frustrating things that happen in college football. I hate near upsets. I hate when a team like Alabama gets off the hook, escapes. And they did twice. How many lives does this team have? Because they almost lost a game to Texas earlier with Bryce Young. Something about Alabama looks beautiful, feels beautiful, but at the end of the day, something is weird in there, Jack. What am I trying to say?
It's really a bizarre thing because we're looking at Alabama, and you can't forget, and I know Kayce mentioned this when she started on her rant, which is more than justified because, I mean, absolutely brutal way to lose a football game. However, Alabama they've been talking about this game for literally 9 months.
Yeah.
People have been saying, can't wait to bet Alabama against the spread against Texas A&M next October because I know that Nick Saban's going to run it up on Jimbo, and then Jimbo has the comments in the offseason. They're like, can't wait until Alabama gets to ram it up to Texas A&M, and then they come out, and I mean, I know Jalen Milroe. That was why it was like kind of weird to me. It was like Milroe obviously couldn't throw the ball. If you just put 8 guys in the box or 7 guys in the box, what's he going to do? I know he had some decent throws. Like he did throw for 3 touchdowns tonight. All that being said, Alabama, I mean, this is like the most beatable every team at the top has been, I think, in a little bit. Yeah. It's like it feels, and I'm sure we'll get to Georgia again. I know they won by 32, but there was times that I was like, wow, Auburn's like in this game. So, but it feels like my takeaway from this week in college football is it seems like anybody can really beat anybody, any given Saturday type.
Let me say what I think I noticed about Alabama. They still have the excellent individual talent that flashes all the time. You'll look up and there goes Jahmyr Gibbs for 40 yards. You're like, how do you ever stop this guy? There goes Will Anderson in the quarterback's face. There goes Helms on the back end. There go they got all this individual talent, but it feels like they're in between all those brilliantly individual plays. There are these pockets of them looking like an average football team. They never have had these pockets. Usually, if if Quinn Williams wasn't making the play, then Surtain was making the play on the back end. If Derrick Henry wasn't running the ball, then TJ Yeldon was running the ball. Like, it's just now it seems like they've got all this brilliant individual talent, but nothing really tying it together. And I don't understand it, but maybe it's not going to matter. Maybe they've survived their toughest cuts. Maybe they've survived. I don't know. We'll see. But
I mean, like, if you look, I mean, I still think they have a lot of tough tests. And also, the Alabama past, I don't care who the quarterback was, they get that first down on 3rd and 3.
every time
They get that first down, and they didn't. And it does seem like, I mean, maybe we'll look back and we'll be like, oh, battle tested, and that's the age-old Alabama fan thing to say, like, oh, Saban's teams always get tested. But here we do see, I think, a team that is incredibly beatable. And then, I mean, next week is going to be a hell of a matchup.
I mean, we're going to talk about next week because, my God,
Also,
third Saturday in October, Knoxville, Tennessee. Look out! Yes,
is Bryce Young really injured?
That's what I was going to ask, because it's all, we saw him warm up. We saw that he was dressed, and the storyline coming into it, the news seemingly was he will be available in emergency situations, but it had that air about it that it was like Alabama, like you mentioned, we've said that they thought they were just going to steamroll A&M. So they're like, you know what, give Bryce the week. He's going to have a top 10 matchup against Tennessee, obviously assuming that Tennessee beat LSU, which they did easily. That whole game was an emergency because Milroe, I mean, he had the 3 turnovers that he had, in the first half were awful. I mean, the one fumble, he was holding the ball like he was holding like a pizza tray. Like, it was crazy. So if Bryce Young is not actually that hurt, why did we not see him tonight? Because there was plenty of emergency for Alabama.
Well, I'm going to say this right now. He better play next week.
Oh, I mean,
you can keep up with Haynes King and you can keep up with that offense. I don't know that you're going to Knoxville, Tennessee in front of 108,000 yelling people and keeping up with Hendon Hooker.
That's why.
All right, let's.
To finish it, like, that's why I think, Jack, your question is spot on, because he must be a lot more injured than they're leading us to believe. Because if he wasn't, I feel like he would have started the second half of that game.
I think the major question out of this game that I'm getting from everybody, and I feel like y'all think it too, how good is Mississippi State? I mean, whew, if Alabama struggled mightily with A&M at home, and then Mississippi State just beat the brakes off of them, they could be the number 1 team in the country.
Aren't you Mr. We don't do like transitive property?
No. Mississippi State.
Oh,
man,
it
man.
rises above.
I'm just saying.
So I hate to bring up old shit. I really do hate to bring up old shit. But last year, you beat us, and then we beat Alabama. And I don't think that I remember the score perfectly, but didn't Alabama beat the fuck out of you last year?
I don't recall.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I know we're not a big math family here, but if we are drawing conclusions, now that could not happen. Because I will tell you, Brandon.
I'm just telling you what they're saying in the streets, Kayce.
Well, I will tell you, Mississippi State looks really damn good. I'm giving you shit because you're going to give me shit, but they look pretty damn good.
We'll get to them later. Oh, by the way, I'm going to make unnecessary reference history tonight.
Okay.
Also, Brandon, timed like next week, I think, is you get to end another season. You ended one season today. Next week, you end another season of one of your rivals. I can't wait.
I'm almost certain we're going to lose next week. But anyway, for right now, I'm feeling good.
You're going to get naked?
Tonight? No, we've been naked on the show before. Tonight, when we get to the shit list, I'm dropping 2. And that was an unintentional horns up. I'm dropping 2 shit lists. I feel so strongly this week about the shit list. I'm doubling up.
Are you sure it was unintentional that you just put the horns up?
It was very unintentional, but it is a remarkable segue into who we need to talk about next.
I think it was a Freudian slip, so go on, sir. I love the transition.
Again, we're going to get to Tennessee and TCU and UCLA and everybody. We got everybody on the list, but I got to go to the Red River shootout.
Oh, baby.
I got to go to Quinn Ewers and Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy and Brent Venables losing control in year 1. It's one thing to lose to Texas because Texas has a pretty good team, and we're going to talk about that. But Oklahoma, you know what? Put Oklahoma to the side. Let's talk about Texas first. That's what we should do. Quinn Ewers, a Quinn Ewers led Texas team is a wagon, boys and girls. He's good.
And he fits that role so perfectly. I know we've talked about it. It's beating a dead horse. The mullet, the whole way he carries himself, the way the team plays for him, just everything going into this game. And then for him to play the way that he did, playing so well that Hudson Card comes into the game. And obviously Hudson Card is no schlep either. I mean, but Quinn Ewers is really, really good. And I will say, because I mean, I'm not taking anything away from his performance because he deserves it, but you can't talk about how good Quinn Ewers and Texas offense is without talking about how god awful Oklahoma's defense is. But I know we'll get to them, but there is an element of that because we can't ignore the fact that we talked a bunch of shit all week about OU's offense or OU's defense giving up 700 yards to TCU, but Quinn Ewers is the real deal.
Quinn Ewers, the way he has a way of throwing the ball. He just has a pretty ball that is, I mean, he throws it exactly where it needs to go. When he throws the ball, it looks like it's on time. It's perfect delivery. It's just, he looks like he's playing. When you play Madden, when you play a video game, generally when you throw it to a receiver, it's going to go exactly where you kind of want it to go unless you do something really weird. That's how he plays football. It looks like he throws exactly where he wants. He knows what he's doing. And this guy, the shame of this season is that he got hurt. But I want to ask this question. Folks, if Texas runs the table, this is a big if. It's a big if. Big 12 ain't nothing to play with. If Texas runs the table and they go 11-2 and they win the Big 12, don't they force a difficult conversation with the playoff committee?
Yes, because he got hurt
right
in the most important game of the season. When you look at right now where the playoff landscape is for them, and you look at Alabama, who I do think should drop, and I know we'll talk about rankings later, but still, Alabama is undefeated. Alabama will continue to probably, even if they have these close games, and Quinn Ewers got hurt in that game. So, a lot of times you look at week 2 and you say, okay, that's a long time ago. We talked about the way that Texas played LSU in 2019. It's completely different teams. If Quinn Ewers stays in that game, and I know it's a big if, completely different Texas team. He's now been out 3 games. Now you have to pay attention.
That's probably too far away to think about. They still got to play Oklahoma. They still got to play Oklahoma State. They still got to play Baylor. They still got to play TCU. They got a lot of teams to play. It's not worth talking about yet. But if we get into November and they haven't lost with him yet, it's going to be a conversation that will be had at some point.
And Bijan Robinson too. He's
fantastic. He's a fantastic
grown ass man.
And Texas has. I think their defense is a lot better than people thought it would be. People thought their defense would be garbage, and I know they played a backup quarterback today, but their defense held Bryce Young in check and has been very good this year. Steve Sarkisian in year 2 has to be – he has to be given almost an A+. It's probably like an A, and it would be an A+ if Quinn Ewers hadn't gotten hurt. So I love where Texas is at. I think they're remarkably interesting. It's great to have them back on the national scene. And as we say hello to Texas on the national scene again, I feel like we're saying goodbye to Oklahoma. I
don't feel like we are, Brandon. I know that we are. I mean, I don't know what is going on. And I know, we talked about it this week on the podcast that giving up all of, 668 yards to TCU was an absolute just disaster. Losing to Kansas State the week before, you can forgive. And once again, and I'm not, I don't want to spend too much time talking about fan bases because obviously we're talking about the games themselves on this podcast because it's instant reaction. But still, there was still the Oklahoma fans coming and being like, you know what? He's going to need some time. He's going to need some time. You gave up the most points that Texas has ever scored against you in the Red River shootout today and proceeded to also score 0. I understand that Dylan Gabriel was hurt. I get that. But it wasn't like OU wasn't putting themselves in situations. They could drive a little bit and then would just completely mess it up. You now back-to-back weeks have proven that the defense is disgustingly bad, a level of bad that I didn't know existed when Lincoln Riley was the head coach. And this is the best defensive coordinator in the country, we were told, that took over this job. I'm just shocked at how bad it is.
Well, the thing about the Lincoln Riley era is they had weeks where the defense was this bad, but they were just scoring 63 points. It didn't really matter. But if you lose Lincoln Riley, put him aside, and you hire a guy, and you hire Brent Venables, who has a history of being one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, and I know that they don't have typical Oklahoma talent, but there's still more talent there than there is on most teams in the Big 12. You hire a great defensive coordinator and you come in, and the last 3 games you give up 41, 55, and 49 points. That is atrocious. That is wretched. That is bad. Something's not right. And I give him time, sure, but even if I'm giving him time, I at least expect you to have a little heart. I at least expect you to be able to stand in there and trade blows with somebody. And Oklahoma's not doing it. 49-0 to a Texas team. That Texas is good, but man, Oklahoma's got better talent than 49-0. One more thing before I let you go on that. How bad does it get for Venables? Here's their next 6 games. They got Kansas at home next week. I feel like they'll probably handle that. This feels like a time that the cheese slides off the cracker a little bit.
I don't know.
But then they got at Iowa State. They got Baylor at home, at West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and at Texas Tech. These are not easy games.
They're not. And what you said about having heart is 1000% correct. And I don't know, obviously you had really important things going on, much bigger than this podcast or work or anything, but we had Dawson on, our TCU guy, played for TCU last year. And he mentioned that the TCU players that he's friends with told him that during that game last week, they felt like OU players just quit. They felt like OU players didn't care the way they have in years past when they've played them. And, it kind of shocked us. Like Jack and I both were like taken aback. Like, what? Really? That's exactly what you saw again today. This is a rivalry game that if we talked about it on Thursday, everybody knows if you're a college football fan, these two teams hate each other. No matter who's ranked where, no matter what the situation is, you go into this game, you hate the other side. And the way that OU played today when they got kicked in the mouth early was that they just didn't care that much. It was like, what is going on? Where is this heart? Where is this fire? Where is this passion for this game? And it's not like Texas is the number 5 team in the country and OU is coming in limping. Neither one of them are ranked. So my question is,
I think Texas might jump up.
Right. But I'm saying, like, it's not like they were fighting Goliath today. They were fighting a team that also was not ranked. And my question is it guys that are on the team that are Lincoln's guys that are not really buying in? Is it Venables can't get to these guys? Like, I don't know what the situation is, but there's clearly a problem with how they're playing, not just like the X's and O's of it, just like the heart and the passion of wanting to win and wanting to compete doesn't seem to be there. And I don't know how you fix that this year if these guys are not going to fix it themselves.
Well, I'm just going to say it right now. I'm the king of the South. I'm the king of college football, and yes. I'm the king of petty. I'm the king of being petty. And after watching Oklahoma fans the way they acted when Lincoln Riley left, nobody deserves this more than them. So good.
Brandon, I can't agree with you enough. I just, I really do wonder about that big time culture change. I'm not ready to what?
And meanwhile, USC only allowed 14 points again today.
And I'll say one more thing, because an Oklahoma fan's counter is, but wait till they get, wait till Brent gets his guys in there. Well, he's on the trail losing big-time defensive tackles and defensive linemen to Texas A&M right now. And by the way, if he goes out and gives up 41, 55, 49 every week, these 4- and 5-star defensive recruits he has right now are going to start to wonder themselves. So let's hold off on that. Now,
when do we think we're going to start to see like a transfer exodus? Like, do you think that will happen?
Well, that happened a little bit in the offseason after Lincoln Riley. I don't know if you'll see it as much. I think Brent Venables probably needs a transfer influx.
Mm-hmm.
I think he needs an infusion of transfers, much like Lincoln did at USC. I hate to keep saying Lincoln, but he changed USC around by getting a bunch of players in. I think that's what Venables is going to need to do this offseason.
Yeah, no, I understand that Venables, like, and I'm not saying that it's a complete lost cause with him, because obviously he is a first-year coach, but I think that's where, and it is fair, Brandon, for you to keep bringing up Lincoln, because it's not us that created that storyline that was like, well, they're going to be fine without him. But the thing about this team is that it's just in complete disarray. Like, they have the talent there. I mean, we know that they're not playing, these guys we've never heard of. I mean, I cannot figure out, I can't put my finger on it, and I'm sure OU fans can't either, is why this team just doesn't seem to want to compete when they get punched in the mouth. And that's now what we've seen 3 weeks in a row.
Last thing on Oklahoma, Jack, I got a question. Remember in the offseason when Venables and OU fans even said it about him, Venables wouldn't take Clemson guys. He wouldn't take Clemson defensive transfers. Like, he wouldn't dip into that honeypot and say, hey, come with me, because he was above that, or he was too. Maybe he should have done that.
And
Maybe he should have. Yeah.
Also,
because Dabo would have done it to him.
Is he going to start not honoring commitments if they start looking elsewhere? Or can he not do that with how everything's going? That's going to be very interesting, because if that happens, I have a lot of receipts to go through.
All right.
That's you want to talk about petty? I love a good Jack Mac petty, and boy, I would like that.
Yeah, low key, Jack Mac is the best petty person we've got.
Oh,
I do it very loudly. You do it very loudly, but he's sneaky with it.
Well, see, I would say, like, yeah, you're right. It's low key to people that don't like have a podcast with him all the time.
Yeah.
But the way that Jack does it is very calculated. You and I just kind of shoot from the hip when it comes to things. Like, if we see something we can say petty, we're like, let's do this. Jack has the burn book from Mean Girls. That's what Jack has.
The man keeps a list of the people he hates at Barstool.
By the way, that is one of the lists I want to stay the furthest away from, because it seems like Jack is just witchcrafting that list right now.
Now, we're on a college football podcast, but I do want to make sure this is only people that have truly, truly wronged me. Like, it's not like someone that I just dislike because, and those people, and let me just say, the list's success rate is insane. It's quite literally, I shock myself with it.
All right, now, we don't do this. This is like gimmick infringement. But if we were handing out helmet stickers to the teams that earned it and really had their big days today, Texas is one of those. But Tennessee, TCU, and UCLA are probably my next in line. And we got to go to the Tennessee Volunteers because they've already in the top 10. But there was a little bit of, in my opinion, you're in the top 10, but you need to prove it to me. Like, you beat Florida, didn't really kill them. You beat Pitt, didn't really kill them. Like, you're kind of there, but I'm not sure you're legit. And they came out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and said, Brandon Walker, fuck you, we're legit. And they stuck it. They stuck it to LSU, 40-13. The game was never in question. That is what a top 10 team does to a team that's in flux like LSU. And Tennessee looked like a top-tier team for the first time in a decade, maybe more than a decade. That's what they look like on Saturday.
Not only did they look like that team, Hendon Hooker is that guy.
Yeah.
And, they had the bye week last week, but the game he had against Florida, where everybody was saying, hey, that might have been a Heisman moment. And then he gets an extra week to prepare to go to Baton Rouge. And I know it was a 12 o'clock game or 11 o'clock there versus a night game, but still playing in Death Valley is no joke. This Tennessee offense is unbelievable. They are so good. And I know we'll talk about Georgia, and I know that we'll talk about, just the overall landscape, especially on Tuesday's podcast. But when I said that Tennessee was going to be the second team in the East, in my head, it was like, all right, well, we know Georgia's going to win the SEC East. They're going to go to Atlanta. That's all fine and good. But Tennessee will take that next step and be that second best team. I'm not anywhere near ready to say Tennessee could not beat the shit out of Georgia if they continue to play it this way.
You also can't say they won't. You can't say with certainty they won't win next week.
Well, yeah, but I'm even just talking about just like the division. Like that to me was like, okay, well, if Tennessee, can take that next step and be better, like their fans think they can be, and Hendon Hooker can take that next step too, they'll be second in the East. But they're going to lose to Georgia because what's stopping this team from winning every single game if Hendon Hooker and this offense continues to play that way?
Well, their defense has to prove they can play at an elite level too. They haven't really done that yet. They were probably the best they've been all year today, but they were also playing against a Brian Kelly coached offense, which was a fucking disaster. But I'm not taking anything away from Tennessee because they went into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I don't care what time the game was played. I don't care what LSU's record is. I don't care who their coach or their quarterback is. You go into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and you win a game by 27 points. You have accomplished a great deal in college football. This is Tennessee's biggest win in a long time, setting up the biggest Tennessee game in at least 2 decades.
Today was a day of crazy coaching decisions.
Yeah.
But Brian Kelly's decision to go for it on 4th and 15
my God,
was shocking. It was at the end of the first half. There was like 45 seconds left.
Yeah. No, I think it was 26 seconds left, maybe 23 seconds. Just enough time if you give him great field position to give up a field goal, and he did it.
He sure did.
I tried to calculate it in my mind, like, okay, why did I jumped into his mind. Why would he call this?
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it. I don't know why he did it. Like, their punter wasn't hurt. So I don't know.
There was no reason that anybody could come up with, whether it was the room that we were in all day, whether it was Twitter, whether it was in conversations way later, that you could come up with why he would do that. And Brandon, you tweeted it, but it's like, it's not even just like, oh, that was a bad play call, that was a bad decision. It was just like, is Brian Kelly an idiot? Like that wasn't even like, oh, hey, maybe, it's over our head coaching decision that like we could disagree with, like, not to bring up A&M, but it's like, the Jimbo decision. It's like, we can pick that apart. And there was nobody on the planet but Brian Kelly that thought what Brian Kelly did there made any fucking sense.
I can't believe we lost that team. Anyway, all right, we move on from Tennessee, who we will talk. I assume Tennessee will be the belle of the ball this week as they get ready for the huge game next week against Alabama. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is, like, you mentioned their defense, and I know that, LSU's offense has been pretty, subpar all year, but, Katie just has the stats up. I mean, they did hold LSU to 55 yards on the ground. Like they did take that next step up. After seeing what Alabama's offense looks like, and, we'll see what happens with Bryce Young, but it's not like Alabama's offense was off the charts amazing today either. So, their defense played, and there were a lot of plays that bounced Tennessee's way today. That's not taking it. I mean, they deserved to kick the shit out of LSU, but their defense did still play pretty well.
No, it did. It was the best defense we've seen out of Tennessee this year. And, their defense, they won against Florida. Defense wasn't great. They won against Pitt. Defense wasn't great. Their defense was great today. So they showed elite tendencies today. They showed elite traits. And Hendon Hooker, some of the throws he made, the second touchdown pass he threw, the 45-yarder, I believe, to Jalen Hyatt, was as pretty a ball. You can't throw a prettier ball than that. And it was right when they needed it, too. Like, they look like an elite football team in year 2 of Josh Heupel. So good for them.
You know what this means?
What?
We have to have Big T. We have to have Big T on the podcast. We've given Big T a lot of shit, since he's been around, and had him come in as the crazy delusional Tennessee fan. He wasn't in the office last week, when we did the heat check. Big T needs to come in and tell us how he's feeling about this Alabama matchup.
Yeah, we'll see. We will see.
Also, Tennessee did this without Cedric Tillman, their best receiver, too.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if he'll be back for Alabama, but that's just another.
I don't know how Heupel did it so quickly, but they've got just weapon after weapon. They got Hyatt. They got who's the other guy they got on their good receiver. They got a bunch of good receivers, a bunch of good weapons, and Hendon Hooker's fantastic. Is it McCoy?
McCoy.
McCoy, Squirrel
White.
Something.
Yeah, Squirrel White. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Squirrel.
Brandon,
he's awesome.
Have you heard about why his name is Squirrel?
No, why?
I kept asking, I was like, what's his real name? Big T didn't know. So I think, Jack, you might've been the one to look it up. His great grandmother, which, first of all, if your great grandmother gives you a nickname, like, that's a legacy name, because you gotta respect her, gave him that nickname because he was running around as a child at the same pace in the backyard as a squirrel.
That guy was always going to be a Division I football player.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Trying to think that's why my parents called me Basset Hound. I was just trying to think of a slow, goofy dog. All right.
That would be the one.
Well, it was a heck of a weekend in college football.
Yes, it was.
It
Oh,
really
boy.
was. You know what else enjoyed a tremendous weekend?
Oh,
Oh
God.
man.
My penis.
No.
It is
knew it.
time.
I knew it was coming.
It is time, and so did she. It is time to talk dicks. Not just mine, not just Jack's, but all the dicks that are watching this show and listening to this show. Dicks make the world go round. They really do. But when dicks ain't operating right, the world don't spin quite as well, does it? Nope. For that, you need Roman swipes. They are clinically proven to help you last longer in bed so that world keeps spinning and everybody keeps smiling. That's what I want to do. I want to make your partner smile, and I'm doing it with Roman swipes. They make, again, clinically proven to help you last longer in bed. You just take a swipe out in a discreet pack, you swipe it on, and you get results. Isn't that right, Jack?
Yes, and let me tell you, you may show up to the game, but you may just blow that load too quick. And guess what? Roman's here to help, because studies show that on average, after 1 month of using swipes, men last 3 minutes, and after the second month, 5.5 minutes longer. That's a 340% increase. And I guarantee you, your significant other will be thanking you.
Go to getroman.com/Walker to get 20% off your first order. I believe I got that right. It's getroman.com/Walker. Your partner will thank you, your dick will thank you, and you yourself will thank you because you'll enjoy life that much more. Roman swipes. All right. Nobody would have thought we would have had a ranked matchup in Lawrence, Kansas that gets game day, but we got it. TCU 38, Kansas 31. Now, the Kansas ride has been fun, and what I like about this game is that it was a thrilling back and forth affair. They both took turns making big plays and scoring points. TCU, probably the better football team. I mean, they were a 7-point favorite. They won by 7 points. I love the fact that this is the way Kansas lost. Like, Kansas showed up, and I think Kansas is still a very good football team. I don't think this was embarrassing for Kansas. Kansas and TCU slugged it out. TCU ended up winning the game, but I came out with tremendous respect for both teams. I don't think anybody looked bad here, and TCU still set up. They're still undefeated, but Kansas can take a backseat to nobody at this point. I thought this was a fantastic game, and I got one more point. I'll let you talk to that about how good of the game, because I got one major point coming out of it. What do you think of TCU and Kansas, Kayce?
Well, Jack and I had, a little moment on the podcast on Thursday where I told him I think he's a fun sucker because he didn't think, that Kansas was going to be able to beat TCU. He was right.
Yeah.
But even watching this game, and I know they lost, and again, no moral victories, it's so hard not to root for this Kansas team. I mean, Jalen Daniels goes down, and in my head, it was like, all right, this is over. TCU is going to boat race them. Jason Bean comes in and has a phenomenal game. And I know that, that it wasn't, to me, like, I know he played last year, so it wasn't like he was completely unknown, but Kansas is so much fun to watch, and them even being in the game the way they were up until the last plays of the game with Jason Bean as their quarterback. I love this Kansas team. And that's why, you mentioned earlier, you think that next week, they play Oklahoma next week, that it'll be, Oklahoma will take care of business. I'm not sure. I think this Kansas team is going to get right back off the mat because they lost their starter quarterback that everybody thought, was the reason this team is so good, and almost beat TCU today.
And that is my major point from this game. And it tells me how good of a coach Lance Leipold is, because Lance Leipold doesn't coach scared. Lance Leipold took a job at Kansas that nobody else would take. He goes there. He doesn't coach scared. He beats Texas in year one. He almost beats Oklahoma in year one. Now he starts off 5-0, gets game day. He coaches like a man who wants to win a fucking game. And when his starter went out and his backup came in, the guy coached to win the game. Their staff kept calling attacking plays, throwing down the field. They didn't do – if you watch teams like Kentucky tonight who had a backup quarterback, NC State who turned to their backup quarterback, these offensive coordinators go in this little pathetic, cowardly shell where they're just calling quarterback draws and they're not throwing the ball down the field and they're not doing anything risky at all. And that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do in college football. Because if you don't take any risk, you're not going to get any reward. It's pussy football. And Lance Leipold didn't do it. He had a backup quarterback come in. He coached like a man. They almost won the game because of it. This guy had 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. I thought Kansas was thrilling to watch. But, Jack, I'll let you take one more victory lap.
Come on, Jack.
You were on TCU first, and you get to keep them.
Go on with your bad self, Jack. You deserve it.
No, I mean, this Quentin Johnston guy is something else. He is.
Let me just for anybody who doesn't know, receiver for TCU.
He's the one that if you watch TCU, you were like, oh my God, who is that? Because first of all, he looks like he's fucking Zeus because he wears number 1. He's like 6'4", 240 pounds, made of like fucking God knows what from wherever Superman's from. And then also Max Duggan continues to play well. I was a little bit, not that impressed today. Next week's going to really tell me if TCU is truly the best team in the Big 12 against Oklahoma State. I'm sure we'll get to that. But good win, tough environment. There was times when it felt like they could have like folded and they didn't. And I think TCU's a really good team. And like Oklahoma fans are saying, oh, it's year 1 for Brent Venables. You got to give him time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is year 1 for Sonny Dykes after a historic coach of TCU left. That's legit. And obviously, still we're halfway through the season, kind of, but still a lot to play. But Sonny Dykes is, without a doubt, one of the leaders for Coach of the Year so far, at least in my opinion.
I mean, you look at both of these coaches. I mean, Sonny Dykes and Lance Leipold. Like, these are two guys who are, I don't want to say shocking the nation because that feels a little bit disrespectful. But I mean, they've got these programs.
They are.
Do what?
They're shocking the nation.
Yeah, I feel like when I say that, it's like, they were bad, but they are. And Texas obviously takes a forefront in the conversation just because of how bad they beat Oklahoma. But the same thing that we talked about going into this week, and Brandon, you said it at the beginning of this segment, is no one in their right minds would have said the biggest game in the Big 12 in week 6 was going to be Kansas TCU, not Oklahoma Texas. And that is solely, the players obviously are executing what they're doing, but it's solely because you got Sonny Dykes and Lance Leipold coaching their asses off right now.
I want to mention this last guy. Well, he already mentioned the guy. Quentin Johnston had 14 catches, 206 yards, and a touchdown.
Insane.
So that is a man's day of work. And then we go out west to another team who is making their presence known. If Tennessee gets a helmet sticker, TCU gets a helmet sticker. UCLA with Utah coming in. UCLA 42, Utah 32. UCLA quite. I love the fact that Chip Kelly built this thing in silence. Mm-hmm. He built it in the quiet of night. Like, as you got all these fireworks going on in the Pac-12 when Lincoln Riley gets hired, when Oregon goes through coaching changes, when all these things happen, Chip Kelly just slowly, methodically building this thing. Goes out and gets a Charbonnet from Michigan last year, goes out and gets some good defensive players, builds up, develops DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, into – you know what I realized who Dorian Thompson-Robinson is? He's what people wanted. He is what people want Anthony Richardson to be. He is.
Wow.
He is exactly what people hoped Anthony Richardson at Florida would be, which is crazy because they're the two quarterbacks that beat Utah this year. But he had 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, ran for 53 yards. He is a good quarterback. They are a good team, and they put a lot of hay in the barn. Huge win for UCLA.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a 10-point game in the final, but it was actually 42-25. I mean, that last
he threw a late pick 6. It didn't matter.
Right, exactly. Like, so the score isn't as bad as it was, but we joked around about, and obviously the Rutgers Nebraska game now feels like it was forever ago. But, we joked around on the Barstool College Football Show about the sleeping giant thing, and UCLA's not been as bad as Rutgers, so I'm not comparing them apples and apples, but they do feel like they had that kind of sleeping giant type of thing going on where it was just like the Pac-12 in general was down. We weren't really talking about them much. It was like oh, was Chip Kelly really the answer to go to UCLA, like him coming back to coach college? And boom, all of a sudden, this is a battle for the Pac-12, and I know, obviously there's other factors that come into it, but it's now USC and UCLA are not just in the conversation for their conference. Like, we're now talking about these two teams, potentially coming down to who could represent the Pac-12 for the Barstool College Football Show, for the college football playoff. So Chip Kelly kind of had that sleeping giant type of thing going on, and it paid off on a national stage in tenfold today.
So I got one question about one of these teams. Oregon gets a lot of heat for always being pretty good and then losing when it matters. So they'll get to number one, number two. They'll beat an Ohio State on the road, and then they'll fuck up and they'll lose to Stanford or something. And Oregon seems like they're always on the cusp of being in the playoff but never quite get there. When do we start maybe saying the same thing about Utah? Because it seems like Utah is able to get themselves into big games, but they really can't deliver when they get to the big games. Like, they get close to being a great they are a very good program, but they get close to that next level. They never quite get there. They've had 2 games this year they could have lost, and they lost them both. They went.
And then
yeah,
Kyle Whittingham is just Mike Gundy of the West. It's just like, that's who he is. He's like kind of like he's an older guy, but has kind of like an edge to him. He seems a little bit younger. He's cocky. He sometimes says like some things to like reporters that he shouldn't. And then he just builds this great team, but can never really convert to that massive, massive moment. So, yeah, I mean,
and that's
what are you supposed to say about Kyle? Like, he's a great coach, but maybe just a really good coach, not great.
They had playoff hopes beginning of the year. Now they're reduced to being a spoiler. Now now they can spoil USC. I'll tell you another team. We can talk about UCLA and we can talk about USC, and that's all well and good. The Oregon Ducks are just laying there too. Like, they embarrassed themselves in week 1, but they have quietly put it all back together. And Bo Nix is having a year. Like, they get UCLA, and just watch out. Oregon's laying in the weeds.
We talked about that this week, Brandon, because we gave out like fan base awards on Tuesday, and then Jack also talked about the renaissance of Bo Nix on Thursday, which he has every right to because he's never given up on Bo Nix. But we talked about that, about how, Oregon, because of the way they lost to Georgia, that it was so easy to just be like, all right, well, they're going to have to rebuild, and can Bo Nix really do it? And, I know it was Arizona, but they go out and they handle business today, beat Arizona 49-22. And Oregon fans should have as much. I mean, they are very hopeful, which why wouldn't they be? So, the Pac-12 is so interesting. I think with Utah, what confuses me, because like you said, they are now reduced to playing the spoiler, is, Cam Rising had plays today where he was playing his ass off. He's a grown man. You want to talk about being a grown man. Cam Rising can just absolutely bully people. They had, going into this game, one of the best, if not the best across the board defense in the conference. And then they just, and UCLA played really well. And like you mentioned, like Charbonnet is unbelievable. But like, where is the disconnect between having a quarterback like that, having the defense that you do, having a coach who's been there, who is a very good coach? Why is it not all coming together? That's what's confusing about this Utah team.
All right, now let's move into the good portion of the show, where we move off the focused games and we move into I'm going to just hit you guys with the good that I saw in college football on Saturday. And here's number 1. I don't know if I've never noticed it before or if it's becoming a new thing as you fire coaches earlier, but it seems like we have a trend of teams and programs getting new life as soon as they make that change at coach. So Arizona State beat Washington today. After Herm Edwards, they had showed some life last week in a loss, but they won today against Washington. Georgia Tech has won 2 games in a row. Let me repeat. Georgia Tech, who earlier this season I said might be the very worst team in Power 5, has won 2 games in a row. They beat Pitt, now they beat Duke. Nebraska has won 2 games in a row. Now, they haven't beat the best competition. They won Indiana, and they beat Rutgers last night. And then Wisconsin, a week after making a shocking coaching change, absolutely looked like a different team. I know they played Northwestern, who's garbage, but they look like a different team. Graham Mertz was getting out of the pocket and making plays, and maybe it's the post-firing renaissance that's going to become a thing in college football right now.
The Wisconsin one was so funny too. I mean, yeah, Northwestern stinks, but it wasn't just like they won and they kind of squeaked it out. And it's like, okay, a new life. Like, Dan was sitting in the gambling cave talking about how Graham Mertz finally looked like the quarterback that we all joked around that he was in his first game in 2020 when we were making Mertz for Heisman merch. Like it was just like, bam, this Graham Mertz is back.
2 weeks, they scored 38 points today. They won 38-7. 2 weeks ago, they couldn't have scored 38 in an open scrimmage against Air. Will they score 42?
Yeah.
42, excuse me. They scored 42 points today. 2 weeks ago, they would not have scored 42 points against nobody.
I mean,
so it's listen, they look good. I think Georgia Tech is the biggest one. I mean, Georgia Tech was dead and they fired an idiot and he's gone, and all of a sudden they've won 2 straight, which leads me to think, what's Auburn doing? Like, see if you can't strike up a little coach firing renaissance for yourself.
Well,
Also,
Auburn has more problems than just Brian Harsin.
They do. Yeah, Jack.
What's really going to put this to test is Colorado, because I think they are the worst team. But if they have a bounce, if they have a dead cat or a fired coach bounce, it's officially a thing.
It is
like
like
their green line
Cal.
test.
It's versus Cal, so it's doable.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I didn't think Georgia Tech was going to go on the road and beat Pitt last week, but they did. So, all right, the good. Israel Abanikanda.
Izzy. Just go with Izzy.
Barstool athlete. I think it's Abanikanda. I practiced it in the mirror. Abanikanda, 304 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns.
God.
One of the best, one of the most dominant performances we've seen from a running back in a long time. They beat Virginia Tech, who's garbage. They're terrible. But Israel Abanikanda, we joked about Pitt earlier in the offseason when Pat Narduzzi was lamenting the fact that his old offensive coordinator wanted to throw it too much. Maybe he had a point. This guy, 304 yards, 6 touchdowns. Let me make an announcement right now. I was gone. I will unveil the first Because List watch list on Tuesday.
Love it.
We're unveiling the Because List on Tuesday. We've got enough games. We've got enough evidence. We got enough, and Mr. Abanikanda will be on the list.
An absolute beast of a day. Also just a great name, Barstool athlete. But I mean, if we go ahead.
Katie, you have one assignment from me right now, okay?
Yeah.
Who you got to talk to? I need one of those Izzy to the HIZZY shirts. I need that immediately.
I want one too.
Do you want a t-shirt, hoodie, or crew?
I want a t-shirt.
I'd like a crew, please.
She wants a crew and everything.
Crew and everything.
She likes crews. The good.
Mississippi State.
Will Rogers threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 40-17 win over Arkansas. He now has 22 touchdown passes. He became the SEC's all-time completions leader today. The people he passed David Green, who played for 24 years at Georgia. Will Rogers has started for 18 games. It hasn't started that many games. He began his starting career in the middle of 2020, so he's probably started 2 full seasons maybe. He hasn't started that much, and he's the completions leader. Mississippi State looked great today, and they beat a team who, I'm a classy guy. I'm a very classy guy. I'm above all that petty shit. But I told you 3 weeks ago that Arkansas was about to go on a losing streak. When all the rest of these Associated Press idiots that don't watch football looked at their box score and their record and said, oh, my God, Arkansas is a top 10 team. I told you that was a fraud. I told you that was a fake. I told you that was phony. I told you they were going to lose to A&M. They did. Told you they'd lose to Alabama. They did. I told you they'd lose to Mississippi State. They did. They're going to lose to BYU next week. They are not good. And Arkansas fans got this brilliantly divine excuse dropped in their lap. Oh, we were without our starting quarterback. He stinks too, guys. He stinks too. And nothing about him would have changed this game today because he doesn't play defense. 600 yards for Mississippi State. My God, it felt good. Arkansas got to celebrate a fake victory over us last year with a bad call in their favor in the end. And this year, we got it back. 23-point victory. Sam Pittman. Maybe the honeymoon might start to be over soon. That idiot started Cade Fortin today, a guy that couldn't throw the ball 5 yards, and didn't start Hornsby, who was a much better player. Anyway, I'm beside myself.
Did you see his quote?
I was about to say, Jack.
There we go.
Jack,
what did he say?
Oh my God, Brandon, this is all time.
He said, and I'm going to pull up the exact quote, but he said that, hey guys, like the goal this year was to just make a bowl game. So we could still do that. And so and then he said, we really need a bye week, but we're not going to get that. So yeah, that's where he's at right now.
3 weeks ago, this team was in the top 10. Their fans thought they were going to beat Alabama. Their fans thought they were going to win the national title. They were going to be in the playoff. And Pittman was riding that wave. Well, I don't know that he can physically ride a wave, but he was at least going along with the momentum. And I'm telling you, I think there are going to be cracks in that armor because their fans are turning on their coordinators. They're turning on Bryles and they're turning on Odom. And Bryles and Odom are the only reason they had a winning record last year. Without those coordinators, he ain't shit.
Brandon.
Yes.
Let's really just let what Sam Pittman said soak in for a second.
Yeah.
All the things that you just mentioned, and I know just as well as you do how these Arkansas fans operate. I've got Arkansas fans back in my mentions. I haven't said dick about Arkansas today. I haven't said a word about Arkansas. All I cared about at the end of the night was A&M Alabama. They're coming in with Bible verses talking about how my unborn kid's going to look like a horse, all this shit. And Sam Pittman had the balls to get up in a press conference after they lost to you today and said, hey guys, I don't know what the big deal is. Our goal was to just be in a bowl game. What?
Yeah.
You're talking about, and I very rightfully so got a lot of shit from Arkansas fans when I said they were delusional coming into this season. Fine, you can dunk on me with that. You had a great season last year. That's wonderful. All the different things that played into it. And now your head coach, this guy that you thought was better than every other coach outside of Nick Saban and Dabo, is saying, well, we just wanted to make it to a bowl game. That's not what Arkansas fans told us all year. That's not what we've heard. And they wouldn't have said that had they not lost to you today.
Oh my God, it was delicious. It was fantastic. I don't know if y'all paid attention to my Twitter activity around the hours of 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
Oh baby, I soaked it in.
I found a tweet from Unnecessary Roughness from 2 weeks ago that had 84 quote tweets, and I answered all 84 of them. I answered. I went all 84. I just went. It was like, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, ugly? I just kept going. What?
Was it the one where you said they're gonna lose their next 4 games?
Yes.
And they all that picked up wins in Arkansas Twitter, and people. What you would have thought you said they were about to lose to Missouri State, which they almost did.
I know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, right? They're going to go out to BYU and they're going to win next week, and they're going to say, "Aha, you were wrong." I'm like, I think the point's been made, guys.
Oh yeah, no, you had every right to do it. I just the fact that, like, you know, it's different whenever media, or like, and I wouldn't even obviously not call us media, when like personalities and when we can say like, hey, you guys thought the ceiling was a little too high. Again, I'm part of one of those fan bases. When your own head coach is coming out and saying, well, you know, we just wanted to win 6. Hell, you can make a bowl game winning 5 games now. Like, that's all Sam Pittman wanted to do. That's not what you want to hear your savior of a head coach say after week 6. We've only had 6 weeks, Sam. Like, you don't have to like fold in the table yet.
There's a chance he was just confused that he just wanted a bowl of ice cream or something.
Oh,
Um,
damn it, Brandon. Damn
more good. Okay. There's a couple teams that have gotten off the mat, and I got to shout them out. Notre Dame's, they've stood back up. Like they were down. They were knocked down. They were beaten down after the first 2 weeks. They lost to Marshall. Ha, ha, ha. We're going to fire this guy. Oh, no, my God. Now he's Catholic. By the way, Jack, is he undefeated? Is he undefeated?
Yes.
Okay.
Marcus Freeman is undefeated as a Catholic. And I got to say, I thought he should have saved it for when he was really under pressure. But hey, by the grace of God and Jesus Christ, Notre Dame. Also, by the way, we make fun of Notre Dame fans. They sold out that stadium tonight in Vegas.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, they have a national fan base, and that shows.
Yeah, I was just like, damn, that was crazy. Also, LSU fans, we have to have a conversation. You
don't have the one I'm going to have with them.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's coming. Is it the same thing I'm going to say to him?
I think it is.
Yes, LSU. Yeah, you'll get there, but we have to have a come That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
it's coming in the bad. It's coming in the bad.
It's coming. For Notre Dame, like, and to to kind of bring this full circle to what we said on Thursday, was that this Notre Dame BYU game, obviously they sold out the stadium. Obviously, it was a big game, but it wasn't that big of a game, like from a national standpoint, as it should have been, because when Notre Dame lost to Marshall, they kind of, as Brandon would say, the cheese slid off the cracker. Like, this game should have been one of the biggest games of the week. And it really wasn't. We didn't even have it on in the gambling cave for most of the night. But the fact that Notre Dame won the game 28-20 and Marcus Freeman has turned this around, it's a huge storyline. It just sucks for Notre Dame that they had the losses that they did.
It does, but this was always a year that was about, first year head coach getting used to it. He's recruiting at a high level, so he's going to be building from here. The fact that they got up off the mat and now they're 3-2, and listen, their wins aren't bad. They beat a North Carolina team we're going to get to in a minute as part of the good here. They beat BYU, who is not a bad football team, and their defense is legit. So Notre Dame off the mat. I want to shout out another team from Northwest Indiana that is off the mat. Purdue goes to Maryland and beats Maryland. Maryland, I've been on them all year, not a bad football team. Purdue goes to Maryland. You got to realize Purdue in the Big Ten West, we thought Minnesota might be it, and they had a disappointing loss to Purdue last week. And it's still anybody's ball game out there. Purdue has a loss to Penn State at the last second and a road loss at the very last second to Syracuse, and that's it. They just won 2 tough road games. They went to Minnesota and won. They went to Maryland and won. They have a very good quarterback. Purdue looks to me like the class of the Big Ten West, so shout out to them. C.J. Stroud. Now, they were playing Michigan State, who's obviously got a porous pass defense. And Jack, I'll let you spike the football. This is a weekly thing now where Jack gets to spike the football on the 70 IQ Spartan Tribe. But C.J. Stroud, 361 yards, 6 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. Ohio State's just been quietly amassing an army of receivers again with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we thought would be great. He's been out for injury. Marvin Harrison Jr., 7 catches, 131 yards, and they were the kind of catches that make you go, oh my God, is this a future first round pick? It was incredible catch.
He could have put together like his own Sports Center top 10 type of day today. I mean, he did like the some of those catches, like, and of course, because they were beating the shit out of Michigan State by that point, that it was kind of like in the background of a lot of things, but we would hear Ev be like, holy shit. And we'd like look up and see every single time it was him. It was like, well, Marvin did it again. It's like they are so good. And I mean, CJ Stroud obviously having the day that he had, and I'll let Jack take the honors here, but Michigan State is abysmal. They had 7 rushing yards today.
We'll get to them. If I had a vote for the number 1 team in the country, I would vote Ohio State right now.
Yeah, I would too. And I feel like that's probably going to happen. I would assume.
the voters have shown a tendency this year to go ahead. If somebody doesn't impress in that one spot, to go ahead and get them out of there. They Alabama was there first and they didn't look good against Texas. So they moved Georgia up, and then Georgia didn't look good. They moved them out. So they've shown the ability to rationally reward the teams that looks the best at that time. So it's
Did you just
interesting.
say
I
something
do
nice
wonder
about AP voters.
He doesn't do that normally.
Shocker. I'm big of you. I'm proud.
don't sass me, Stats.
Well, he took a couple shots at him earlier in the show, so
Fair enough.
Don't sass me, Smith. Shout out to the North Carolina Tar Heels. Did anybody see the North Carolina Tar Heels being 5-1 at this point in the season?
I got to give you a little bit of a inside baseball moment right now.
Yeah.
Poor Katie. So obviously there were so many people here today that the rooms were split. And so this was obviously long before, the Miami, North Carolina game ended right as the Mets game was starting. So Katie is back, in the area where they do the confessionals. And I come in to get a drink and she's like, "Hey, what's on the TV that Dan and Dave keep looking at?" And I was like, "Oh, it's Miami, North Carolina." She was like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because Danny Boy Kane guaranteed a win and Dave's getting his ass kicked today. So this is like a huge game." She was
a lot of money on the line too.
She was
I've been there.
Silent. I felt so bad for her because that game obviously ended. It was a great ending. There was so much drama. Like North Carolina apparently can play defense. Who knew? And Katie had to be, she didn't have to be, but she very smartly was the quietest person I've ever seen in my life. When they won that game, I saw her come out to where she could actually make noise and celebrate by herself. It was one of those moments where you're just like, damn, I wish a North Carolina fan could be loud right now. She couldn't do it. Credit to her. But it was one of those games today.
It was also the TV that they were watching was a solid 30 to 45 seconds ahead of my stream because they're on direct TV. So I just kind of knew everything that was coming. And I didn't know at the end because they were silent as I didn't know what was happening. I saw it end. I stood up. I just walked out before I could do anything, say something dumb, get caught by anyone. And I was just like, I'm going to save my ass and get out.
The Tar Heels are 5-1. They beat Miami, and Drake May continues to put up numbies, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is one of
there was still
no. We're gonna get to that, and I think that's about the other team.
Okay, well, at least there's moments. There's still highs and lows are really bad. There's a few times we just couldn't tackle our shit, but there are moments we got the stops. We got obviously Tyler still had to throw the ball to get the interception. But there were steps. I think there's been steps of improvement. I still hate Gene Chizik, but there's at least growth within the year. So I'll take the foot off the gas, the gas a little bit.
All right, now I'm going to transition to the bad, unless I haven't shouted out anybody that needs to be shouted out. Do you have somebody, Kayce?
Katie did this last week, and I feel like every single week this is going to be a little bit of a battle. Probably not next week because of what the matchup is, but Michigan did finally pull it out at the end of the game.
I just can't give them credit for looking sluggish against Indiana for 3 quarters.
They did, but it was, if you want to say it's a look ahead spot because they're playing Penn State next week, fine. But there were definitely moments in that game, and especially because of how good Ohio State looked. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to give them credit, but I do think that it is there were moments that even people in the room that were betting Michigan were like, oh my God, they suck. And they ended up, winning by 20?
By 21, not 22. And that's what everyone had 22 or 22 and a half. It didn't cover by 1 point.
I haven't been watching the updates. Do we have anything on Mike Hart?
He had a technical, so it was officially had a seizure. He's in the hospital overnight.
Stable, right?
At least stable. I don't know if the hospital was an active or just kind of watching, but at least overnight. But
I don't think any of you are old enough to remember Mike Hart playing, but he was an absolute beast. Had thighs the size of tree trunks.
Well, he's the one who said the little bro comment. That's where it's up. Also, before you get to bad, you forgot a team. UConn has won 2 straight games, first time since 2015. What a turnaround, truly amazing. Jim Mora, the UConn Huskies. Zion Turner goes home down south, beats FIU by 21 points, 33-12. Just amazing. I'm in awe of this team. They changed. I was expecting a year or two. They changed the culture. The foundation is set. I'm really excited. Shout out to you, Connecticut UConn Huskies. 2 straight wins. We're going for 3 next week against Ball State. Who knows? You may see us in bowl season. No more jokes anymore.
Well, let's not rule jokes out, but for
but
right now,
good.
no more jokes.
Do you want to talk about Houston's comeback on Friday, getting off the mat?
That was a big comeback. Listen, Nebraska did the same thing, not as big, obviously, but Houston with a huge comeback, won 33-32 at Memphis. This is after Jack tweeted, "I'll never bet on Houston again," which I don't remember. Were they favored or not?
They were underdogs.
Okay,
yes,
so they did end up. So Jack had his big moment where I'll never bet on him again, and you ended up winning the bet.
Yeah, no, that was.
Well, he was reverse jinxing it.
Can I shout out some? Go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, that was. I didn't even think it was reverse jinx. That was just. That was the last time I got fooled by Houston, and then they came back. So shout out Houston.
I want to give out one more good before I get to the bad. Just a impossibly pleasant night at Rutgers. I know they ended up losing the game. I know they lost 14-13 to Nebraska, and it was disappointing. But the show we had at Rutgers, the weather, the environment. I went in the stadium. I gave away a TV. I'm probably the only person in the history of the TV giveaway to actually just choose somebody on the front row because I didn't want to walk up the steps. But they said, "Here, give this TV away." I said, "To anybody in the student section?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." And I was walking in, and there was a girl in the front row. I said, "I'm coming to you." She didn't know what I was talking about, but I took her TV box and I gave it to her. But it was an awesome night at Rutgers. It
was, I've only been to Rutgers one other time for a different content thing that we did a while ago. And it was not the same environment that we had on Friday night. The weather was great. The crowd was great. Shout out TJ and his family. They were awesome. Oh, Brandon, I just saw the video of you handing a girl a TV. That's a big TV.
It's an empty box.
Oh,
right.
You also, you put it over your head.
It's an empty box. Yeah.
I was about to say, did she just keep the TV the whole time in the student section?
Yeah, she's holding it. Now that I look, she's like literally underarming it with like one hand. Like obviously there's nothing in it. But no, Rutgers was great. It was weird doing a show on a Friday night. It didn't even feel like we were doing a show.
I kind of liked it. I kind of liked the Friday night show.
I did because I liked it. That I wouldn't want to do it every week because it extended how long college football was. Like it was like, well, got to wake up and do it again. However, I thought the atmosphere was wonderful. I did not go into the game. Poor Rutgers fans. From what I understand, your guy TJ like literally is like heartbroken.
It was tough. I've never watched a game with him. We saw the game, and first off, when Noah Vedral threw the interception, I think every single Rutgers fan collectively stood up and went to the exits. Like you could look around the stadium. There's black lines in the way on like the stairs to get up. There's no in the stands, only red. I just left. Game ended. He just sat there on his phone inside. Half the time he wasn't even like looking at it. He was just kind of staring. Big Ev, Soli and I. We were like, no one wanted to touch him. We just were like waited it out.
Yeah.
But I will say to TJ's credit, I don't know if Kayce and Brand, how much you saw of this, especially in the game. Every single person with Rutgers, like official athletic stuff, greeted him by name. They went up to him, were like, "Oh my gosh, hello, so nice to meet you." We always kind of knew this guy, Rutgers, and people don't know, TJ like helps produce a bunch of shows here, including like the Yak and Brandon Walker show. I was blown away by how many people like he linked up to his
crazy
game.
right now, man. This is something.
All right, he's just Jack's just mad we haven't gone to UConn yet. Just chill out. We haven't gone to stores yet. My bad. All right, the bad. Here's the bad. Iowa, Illinois happened, and I don't know why they keep subjecting us to this.
Did you see that there's a marriage proposal in it? That's gonna be the worst game ever to do.
That's gonna end in divorce immediately. Illinois wins 9-6. Oh my God! I saw a stat. that Iowa has held 5 of their 6 opponents to 10 points or less this year, and they're 3-3.
I mean, just Iowa, we've said it before, and I mean, it's not going to go anytime soon. Like, if you're an Iowa fan, you've just got to want more for yourself. You've just got to want better.
I think I would just even take losing 38-35 every week. Like, at least that gives you some moments in the game where you're happy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you at least scoring some points. Now, I will say, you know, one silver lining, even though the game was garbage, our guy, we are a Chase Brown podcast now because he was on the podcast. He had 146 yards tonight.
Oh, by the way, y'all just getting players on the podcast now? How'd that happen?
Jack doing witchcraft again.
No. Chuck Naso, no Illinois SSID. They offered it up to us last second. We put it together. Maybe we can get Izzy to the HIZZY on. Barstool athlete.
All right.
We also have some opportunity for next week for even a coach or two.
Yes, we have the options, but I will say that game 9-6. Anytime you see a game where a score is like that, you just know it was a disgusting game to watch.
All right, now, yes.
For disgusting games, I had a question on Twitter. I kind of got ratioed for this. How do we love disgusting college football games, but somehow in an NFL, like Thursday night game, that was just gross and depressing? But something about college football games being that bad, it's almost endearing.
I think there's an expectation of when college football teams are bad, they're just really, really bad. But professional athletes are still pros that should be able to put a product on the field that is at least palatable and watchable. You can understand where college kids wouldn't do it. I don't know. You're right. You're kind of right about that.
It's kind of like when little kids do dumb shit. It's funny. When adults do it, it's not. That's the way I feel. It's like college kids. It's like, all right, like they're kids or whatever. But then you see the pros do it, and you're like, you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to look like asshole.
All right, now the bad. LSU fans. And Jack, you can tell me, you can nod your head if this is where you were going or not, and I'll let you go somewhere too. LSU fans, you got to be better than what I saw today. LSU fans are, before the game and after the game, are using the fact that was an 11 a.m. local kick time as an excuse. They are saying, oh, it's supposed to be at night. We don't do Tiger Stadium games at 11. LSU fans, you are one of the best programs in the country year in, year out. You have the best stadium, the best atmosphere in America. I don't care if that game's at 4 a.m. I don't care if it's at 1 a.m. I don't care when that game is. You have a top 10 team coming into Baton Rouge. You need to show up, show out, and absolutely make it a den of hell for your opponent. Instead, I see Brian Kelly's stupid ass making bad decisions. I see a late arriving crowd. I see a crowd that's not into the game. I'm not seeing any suck that Tiger dick bitch. I'm not seeing any of that. Instead, in the fourth quarter, I'm watching Tiger Stadium sing Rocky Top. That's what you're doing, LSU fans. You are saying, oh, if it's not at 8 o'clock at night, we're not interested. What the fuck are you doing? Be better than that. You guys are one of the best fan bases. You guys might be the best fan base in the country. How did that happen on Saturday? 11 a.m. is not an excuse. Get your ass to the game and be LSU fans. Jack, what were you going to say?
It's unbelievable because this is the same fan base that if you dare put out a graphic that says loudest stadiums or best environments and Death Valley isn't number one, they have an emotional breakdown. Yes. Then on top of this, what a privileged fan base, because Big T gave me a stat that was actually fascinating. This was like the 9th noon kickoff for LSU this century. Yeah. You guys are privileged, and when the tough got, like, when it became tough, you know what you did? You ran away. You said, oh, I can't get up. I'm hungover. Like, oh, guess what? People have been going to college football games hungover forever. Like, what do you, like, what? Pathetic. It was even orange when it was kickoff. And you guys, they were 4-1 coming into this game.
Yeah.
Like, what else do you want?
LSU was ranked, Jack. LSU was number 25.
And they were like, oh, man, it's just like Brian. Like, what are you talking about? You just gave this guy $100 million.
And also, they had only lost to Florida State coming into this game. They
Yeah.
had not lost a conference game. They were 4-1. It is baffling to me. And first of all, it looked like it, obviously not completely a Tennessee home game, but it did. But even coming into this game, LSU fans, I mean, Brandon, we read some of their forums this week. They were like on Tuesday, they were like, oh, well, it's the Vols are just better. Well, yeah, obviously they are, but show up. And Jack, what you just said is so true. I know I think it, Brandon, I know you think it too. Death Valley at night is the best atmosphere in college football. I've never been to a louder, cooler place. But if you are going to get mad that people don't put LSU at number one, I don't care what time the game is. It could be at 9 a.m. It could be at 2 a.m. If that stadium is not rocking, you cannot complain, because there are plenty of places across the country that have shitty games, shitty teams. Virginia Tech is one of those. Virginia Tech, they could lose every game and Enter Sandman's going to hit. What LSU did today, even before the abysmal game they played, was shocking.
It was weird. Like, I'll say it again, they have the best stadium and the best atmosphere in college football. And you only get so many home games a year, usually 6, 7, maybe 8 if you're Michigan. You don't get that many home games a year. That means out of 52 Saturdays in a year, you get to go to your stadium and cheer on your team 6 times. And to do that because it wasn't at night was just also shocking to me.
You bring up the hungover thing, Jack. I mean, Brandon, all 4 of us sitting here, and I'm sure Noah in the control room is like, you getting drunk in the morning for those types of games when you're in college, like those things can be fun. We've gone to plenty of Big Ten games where these kids are having fun at 8 a.m. and showing up. Like, it's not an excuse in Baton Rouge. Like, grow up. You're in college. You can show up to a game and no matter what time. You can start drinking and whenever you want. So don't use this excuse of, oh, it's too early. Like, grow the fuck up and be in college for once.
Some more bad. The Miami Hurricanes.
Tyler Van Dyke.
I give both of y'all permission that if I say that I'm betting Miami again, you may hit me in the face. It's gross. It's garbage. You got to have more pride than this. I don't think it's Tyler Van Dyke so much as it's Tyler Van Dyke plus Josh Gaddis just don't work. Right. Josh Gaddis, his play calling doesn't jive with what Tyler Van Dyke's strengths are. When they fell behind and they had to throw it, like Van Dyke threw the ball pretty well. So it's gross. It's ugly. It's not good. I thought you get embarrassed in Middle Tennessee State. By the way, since Middle Tennessee State beat Miami, they lost to, I believe, UTSA last week, and then they got the shit kicked out of them by maybe UAB today, I believe.
UAB.
Who? UAB, yeah. So they're 0-2 since they walked down to Miami and won that game. I thought Miami would take a week off, come back refreshed, and play a bad defense, and that didn't happen. North Carolina's defense looked better. Miami looked like they weren't ready to play.
Tyler Van Dyke, I mean, he didn't. What was his stats? I mean, his stats weren't like horrible.
Well, he made up the stats in the end, late in the game, but it still wasn't enough.
Some of the throws he made today were just awful. Like, I can't even just throw shade at you. So yeah, I mean, he had 496 yards, but again, that was a lot in garbage time. But I mean, Brandon, I was right there with you talking about Tyler Van Dyke being a top quarterback in the country. It was thrown around a lot today that he was projected to be a top 10 draft pick. Yeah. And not just by idiots like us, like by real people that are paying attention. I mean, his arm strength, I don't know what, like, I don't get how we were so wrong on Miami and Tyler Van Dyke.
And my last bad one that I had was once again, Michigan State just not being competitive. They're 2-4 now, and this is a team that had a miracle year last year where they won. Frankly, they won some games they shouldn't have won, immediately rewarded their coach, and now they come out and they're not even competing. And I know Ohio State's a great team, but last year, one of the biggest embarrassments Michigan State suffered was when they lost like 90-0 to Ohio State when they were still in the playoff race. You would think a little bit of pride would enter. You got them at home now. Stand up and fight for yourself, and they just nothing. There's nothing there in the Michigan State tank. Pretty shocking from a team that was one of the stories of college football last year.
May I add one to the bad list?
Please.
You're not going to
Auburn.
let me talk about Michigan State?
Oh, sorry,
You've
Jack.
had
That's my
multiple
bad.
opportunities to talk about Michigan State, but go ahead.
Michigan State. I just don't know what to say. What happened? It's quite frankly embarrassing. It's every week, and I have this intervention with you every week, and you keep going back to your drug of got to give him some time. Got to give him some time. It's year 3. It's a secondary coach, and I think I could throw for 300 yards on you guys. So,
Yeah, they
Mel
are.
Tucker, I'm sure you're a great guy, but the image that was painted of you and on social media and by your, at least on social media, some very, I would say, scumbag fans, is quite frankly shocking. And hopefully next week we don't have to sit here again. If Graham Mertz lights you guys up, the intervention is going to have to be incredibly serious, because you may need to be sent to rehab.
All right. Did you have one to add, Kayce Smith?
The Auburn Tigers, Brandon Walker. I would add they are bad. I know Georgia ended up beating them, 42-10, and there were some weird things that were going on. But the quarterback situation, you said earlier, it's like, Brian Harsin, like it's time for Auburn to move on. The quarterback situation at Auburn is god awful. Robbie Ashford is clearly not the answer, but they just don't have an answer. They've tried everybody that they possibly can. That it's hard to watch. The fact that the line, was 30, we made fun of that on Thursday's podcast, and they still, they end up losing by 32. They are just a bad football team, and they don't want to play for Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin doesn't want to play or doesn't want to coach there. Clearly, obviously he wants the money, but just the entire program right now is in disarray. And I understand it's Georgia, but you're Auburn. Like, you talk about not showing heart. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, and it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. It really, really couldn't. But I know Auburn, they shit gold. They're going to fire this guy, and they're going to stumble onto the next great coach. They're going to get somebody. Urban Meyer is going to have an epiphany and be like, I want to go coach against Nick Saban or something. Something weird's going to happen where Auburn comes out of there smelling like a rose. It always happens like that.
Do you think it's Brian Harsin's week?
I think we've been averaging one a week, right? So I think he's up.
Also, maybe one for ugly Washington, ranked losing to Arizona State.
Yeah, well, I think Washington has proven over the last couple of weeks they were a little bit of fool's gold. Michael Penix still putting up numbers. They scored 38 points, but their defense isn't very good. DTR tore them up, and now Arizona State tore them up. So, Washington is one of those nice – we have those occasionally in college football. Nice early season stories. Remember this time last year when Iowa was number 2 team in the country? Yeah. Like, we have nice early season stories that just fade throughout the year. So, I'll add one more. It's back in the SEC, but I expected more than that out of Kentucky. They lose to South Carolina at home, 24-14. And South Carolina, Spencer Rattler is not good. Their offense isn't good. They have a very good running back, but South Carolina is not good. And they just were more physical than Kentucky. They thumped Kentucky. Kentucky's coaching staff was cowardly with their play calling for their backup quarterback. If you're not going to allow him to throw the ball down the field, I think he had 11 passes against a bad pass defense. Then what are you even doing? Why even put him out there? Just punt the ball on third down or second down every time. It was cowardly. And Kentucky was with a terrible showing, which sucks because I know what's going to happen. There, Will Levis coming back. They're going to beat our ass next week. But whatever, it doesn't matter. All right, that is the bad. So we now transition. Let me just run down the scores.
Maybe for App State, I feel like they've kind of peaked in.
App State has had the weirdest season of any team I can ever remember.
I love how much Katie loves to pay attention to App State because it happens. Yeah, I know we're sitting in the room and she's reacting in the corner. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh no, don't worry about it. I'm just watching App State. I was like, that is true dedication.
It's a weird
was it Texas State that killed them today?
Yeah, I think Texas State, they used to be a joke. I think they have taken a step up. They are
still a joke.
But they're still if you just beat A&M, you went it's I don't understand. They great. They had the highest highs and now they're hitting the lows within weeks of each other.
Yeah, well, they have the Hail Mary where they beat Troy, which is one of the highlights of the season. They had the 63-61 games of Carolina, which was one of the games of the season. They beat A&M on the road, one of the biggest wins of the season. And then they give up the biggest comeback of the season when they lose to James Madison, and then they lose outright to Texas State. This has been a weird season. All right, in the Big 12 today, number 17, TCU 38, number 19, Kansas 31, the Texas Longhorns 49, Oklahoma Sooners nothing. It doesn't even feel real.
0. A big fat 0.
Can we say that Oklahoma's defense is worse than North Carolina's?
Mm-hmm.
We need another
You know what?
sample size.
You know what? For the sake of the morale on the podcast, yes, Katie, we will say that.
You can have it, sure. Oklahoma State, number 7 in the country, 41. Texas Tech, 31. Oklahoma State kind of came and kind of covered that one at the very end. It was a struggle for him.
Yeah, but you know what though? Spencer Sanders, again, like he's a podcast lifer, and Jack's been a Spencer Sanders guy. Hell of a game today. And I know that it's still early in the season. We're not even midway through October. But what Oklahoma State is doing right now, and I mean, like you said, it was a weird game. They covered in the end, and they did not cover. I had about 11, so just really depended on the number.
11 and a half, actually, I see, yeah.
Yeah, but these are the types of games that Oklahoma State we've seen, even just in the history of this podcast, that they lose. There are games where it's like when they have these back and forths, Texas Tech starting a new quarterback, didn't even really know until right before the game. This Mike Gundy team thus far is not playing the Mike Gundy team type of way. And Spencer Sanders is playing really well. So, I mean, credit to them. They're very quietly leading the Big 12.
By the way,
well, I know TCU, but
for all these teams that struggle as soon as the backup quarterback comes in, Texas Tech has just played 3 quarterbacks this year all of a sudden, and they've all been pretty good.
Yeah.
Troy
McGuire. Shout out him.
Number 20, Kansas State survives 10-9 over Iowa State in a game that probably thrilled dozens of people somewhere in this world. In the Atlantic Coast Conference, that's the ACC, Louisville 34, Virginia 17.
Without Malik Cunningham, too.
The Pitt Panthers, kind of ugly early. They fell behind a couple touchdowns, but ended up coming back against a wretched Virginia Tech team. 45-29, Pitt beats Virginia Tech. North Carolina 27, Miami 24. In overtime, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 23, the Duke Blue Devils 20. Seems like the bloom's off the rose for Duke, which still a pretty good season for them so far. Clemson goes to Boston College and just easily handles business. It wasn't always an oil painting, but they win 31-3. And
Boston College is so bad.
They continue to be the class of that conference. Wake Forest, who is right behind Clemson as far as I'm concerned in the ACC, 45, Army 10, and NC State, a game we haven't mentioned at all. NC State, and we need to mention it right now. NC State 19, Florida State 17, and Jimbo got a lot of shit for his call at the end of the Alabama game. That's fine. Seconds later, and I'm talking about 30 seconds after that call, maybe a minute after that call, Florida State has the ball at about the 18-yard line, maybe the 22, something like that. NC State's used all their timeouts. They're out of timeouts. And Florida State fans tell me they have a bad kicker, and that's fine. But they also had 17 points in this game, which means their bad kicker already kicked a field goal. They have the field goal in their pocket, and they decide to take a shot, a low percentage pass into the end zone. Jordan Travis throws an interception. NC State survives 19-17. I thought it was a shockingly bad call by Mike Norvell to go for it there.
Shockingly.
And I do understand some Florida State fans when they say, you know what, if we missed the field goal, then we would be saying, why didn't we go for a touchdown? Why did we settle for the field goal? And that's fine. But I guess when you make the wrong decision, it's going to make it seem like the other decision was right. That's just life. That's just football.
I agree.
Brutal loss for them because especially that punter, punter punted the ball a yard past the line of scrimmage, which then led to a touchdown from NC State to make it 19-17 because essentially it was like turning the ball or punting 0 yards because
it was punting -5 yards.
Oh, yeah, because it's the penalty as well, right?
I have never in my life.
Yeah, me either.
I didn't know this was a rule. I don't know that. I guess it's just never happened. But the punter starts to take off like it's a fake, and he's running. By the way,
he should have just ran.
He would have made. He needed to make maybe one move, but he should have just run that. Like he had something there, but he decided I think, let's say the line of scrimmage was the 22. He decided about the 23-yard line. Oh, I better kick it, and he kicked it 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage, and the penalty says it's 5 yards and loss of down, which means it comes back to the line of scrimmage, 5 yards, and it's basically a turnover. It's basically a fumble where they get the ball. It's a shockingly, what's the word? A judicious penalty? Not judicious. Punitive penalty? Like it's a very punishing penalty. One of the most punishing penalties you can have on a football field.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because then why wouldn't you, if it's not that big of a penalty, why wouldn't you just do that every time? Yeah. And then you could decide. But that being said, man, I mean, that was the deciding factors because they scored on that to make it 19-17. They went for it on 2 and didn't get it, but final score 19-17.
I don't want to be that guy, but I just do need to correct you. They didn't score a touchdown. They scored a field goal. That's okay. I'm not trying to be that guy. But
it's 2:05 a.m. and
that's right. Y'all have been watching. Y'all been there for 14 hours, and I've been in my house. I should shut up.
No. You should correct me.
Yeah, you should. You should. That's not. I'm just saying that in general, sometimes things that are said at 2:05 a.m.
Two things. Number one, Devin Leary got hurt, and this was probably a bad result for the ACC. If Devin Leary's out for a while and NC State's not very good, because they were not very good once that other quarterback came in, Florida State hosts Clemson next week. And if Florida State had won this game, that was going to be a gigantic game next week. And now it just lost some of the shine. So this was a bad result for the ACC if Leary is out and can't uphold his duties as the second best team in the league.
But Clemson, like you said last week too, is like Clemson's just cruising along, making a great case that they're going to be just fine in the grand scheme of things.
After next week at Florida State, Doak Campbell Stadium, if they win that game, they will put it in cruise control for the rest of the year, and I think they will be in the playoff.
And for injury, it seems his X-rays are negative, but there's MRI, so at least that's more on the positive side.
In the Big Ten, Nebraska 14, Rutgers 13 on a Friday night. Michigan survives 31-10 over Indiana. Purdue 31, Maryland 29 in a game that came down to a 2-point conversion, which Maryland got. Had an illegal man down the field and had to try it again from 5 yards back. Didn't get it. 42-7, Wisconsin over Northwestern. Ohio State 49, Michigan State 20, and Illinois 9, Iowa 6 in a game that should not exist in college football ever again. In the SEC, Georgia 42, Auburn 10, Ole Miss 52-28 over Vanderbilt. And by the way, is Lane Kiffin just a dick?
Yeah. What the fuck was that, man?
Yeah. First of all,
good teams cover. Great.
Jack just popped up so fucking fast. That was awesome.
Vanderbilt.
What the fuck was that, dude?
Vanderbilt led at the half, and we're looking pretty good. Ole Miss obviously outclassed them in the second half. But it was 45-28 with 29 seconds left, with Ole Miss doing everything they could. They scored, ended up winning 52-28. But it was
first and goal.
Yeah,
with 28 seconds left, and all they had to do. Usually, teams kneel. Like I was watching Oregon and Arizona at the end because I had over there, and the Oregon was up by 23 points. They had the ball on Arizona's 20, and with 2:30 left, and they kneeled the ball 3 times. Lane Kiffin scored. Fuck you. Fuck Juice, too, while I'm at it.
No, never.
Lane Kiffin knew the spread.
Let the man say what he's going to say. Let him have his opinion.
It's not that dog's fault.
Yeah,
he knew the spread.
That dog can't tweet. South Carolina 24, number 13, Kentucky 14. Where's my score? Oh, Mississippi State 40, Arkansas 17, Tennessee 40, LSU 13, Florida 24, Missouri 17, in a game that probably didn't inspire confidence from either of those fan bases. Alabama 24, Texas A&M 20. And in the Pac-12, out west, right now with 7 minutes left at 2:08 a.m. Great scheduling, Pac-12, by the way. Stanford 24-16 over Oregon State. UCLA 42-32 over number 11 Utah. Arizona State 45, Washington 38. USC finishes off Washington State 30-14, and Oregon 49, Arizona 22.
And I know, we mentioned USC a little bit earlier when we talked about UCLA, and I'm not saying that Wazoo is any, absolute trophy. Still though, Wazoo is a fine football team. They were 4-1 coming into the game.
Yeah.
Again, Caleb Williams, they're just some of these throws that he has are just absolute dimes. And the USC defense is what everybody keeps pointing to. And I know they're going to have bigger tests and whatever, but holding Wazoo to 14 points, that UCLA USC game, I know it's way too early, and I know we've got tons of football between now and then, but holy shit, that's going to be. And you talk about fan bases that hate each other. They do. They don't get as much love as other ones, but they do.
Well, hold off. We were going to talk about one of those fan bases very, very soon. All right. So I'm actually going to go first, so they'll never go first. Can I go first?
Yeah, Brandon, I would love for you to go first. How unselfish of you to normally not finish first. Brandon Walker. I had to do it. It's 2:10 in the morning. My brain's wired that way. Brandon Walker, who won the weekend?
The Tennessee Volunteers walked into Death Valley Tiger Stadium as a top 10 team, a top 10 number that I don't know that I believed, but they left no doubts. They left no stone unturned. They went down to Baton Rouge. They're one of the toughest places to play in the country, no matter how big the crowd was, no matter how good the team is. They absolutely thrashed LSU from the start. They treated LSU the way a top 10 team should treat them. They looked the part. They looked like an elite team. This league, it looked like Alabama, Georgia, and everybody else. And now at least we have some question mark. Is it Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee perhaps? We'll find out next week, because the Vols have done the work to set up the biggest game in recent history for them at home against number 1 Alabama. It's going to be gigantic. It's good to see Tennessee back. I know they have the most obnoxious fan base on Twitter, and I say that as a compliment. We will see next week, but Tennessee, most assuredly to me, won the week. Kayce Smith, who won the week?
Tennessee is a great answer. I'm going to say a team we've already talked about a lot, so no need to go too much into depth, but I'm going to say Ohio State won the week, and CJ Stroud, he had 361 yards, 6 touchdowns, and, credit to the AP voters that they have shown that they can shift every single week depending on how teams are performing. Ohio State proved today that, and again, I look forward to the Ohio State-Michigan game, but Ohio State proved that it is the class of the Big Ten. They should be number 1 in the country. Michigan State sucks. I get that, but just absolutely boat racing a team that they should. CJ Stroud putting up those numbers, Marvin Harrison Jr., everything that we've already spoken about. They are the number 1 team in the country after week 6. And also when you look at just the questions about Ohio State, is their defense going to be better than it was last year? What's going to happen with, JSN when he gets hurt? They're answering all of those questions every single week, and we're not even having to pay attention to it because they're just beating the shit out of teams.
Jack Mack, who won the week?
Brandon Walker won the week.
Wow.
Because he and Mississippi State went up against an arch rival in the history of this podcast, and he took it to them, and I would say ended their season. I know they still have a lot of games to play, but he made their coach when this whole entire offseason, people were saying Arkansas is a top 10 team in the season, top 10 team. Why aren't you respecting Arkansas? And they said terrible things about you, and I'm sure about your family. And today, you and Mississippi State were proven correct, 40-17. And guess what? You made their coach said. He went down on his knees and begged to the fan base, saying, "We just want to make a bowl game." So massive W, Brandon Walker.
Also, 40-17, not indicative of how big of an ass whooping that was.
No, it was not.
Katie Stats, who won the week?
I'm going to go with Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers. I think for Steve, they had the bad loss, Texas Tech. They weren't really great. Got Quinn Ewers back. And I think this probably set the baseline, like returned at least a baseline and then plus one, I think, for the Texas team, the fan base's eyes. Like, it was just an ass whooping of a huge rival. Like, and they're about to go to the SEC together. That's got to be the biggest win of the weekend, I think.
All right, now we're going to do who lost the week. I just, for some reason in my mind, I'm just picturing Noah back there, and he's going to have to produce this show. So I'm thinking it's 2:13 a.m. So I'm going to do mine. Let's do lost a little quicker,
Okay.
I guess. Let's just
Brandon Walker, who lost the weekend?
Backup quarterbacks. Kentucky was god awful with them. Arkansas was not good with them. Alabama looked very vulnerable with a backup quarterback. In this world of the transfer portal and people going and guys not waiting their turn, suddenly backup quarterbacks aren't what they used to be. We see Kansas was able to look pretty good with one, but Kentucky went from top 10, top 15 team to garbage with their backup quarterback. The era of the backup quarterback is gone in college football. And if you have one, it's an extreme luxury. That's who lost the week. Kayce Smith, who lost the week?
The Oklahoma Sooners. Enough said.
Yeah, that's very good. I feel like that's 2 in a row, maybe 3 in a row for them.
For me?
Or just for somebody saying Oklahoma.
I mean, yeah, like we don't want to beat a dead horse, but when the horse is Oklahoma, we're going to beat the shit out of him, right?
Fair enough. Jack McGuire, who lost the week?
LSU and Brian Kelly and their fans. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, awful.
Catherine Statistics, who lost the week?
Jalen Milroe. I also do agree with Venables in Oklahoma, but to add a new one, Jalen Milroe for Alabama. I just feel so bad for the guy, but woof, he sucks.
All right, now it is shit list time. Who wants to go first?
I assume that you want to go last since it's the first time ever you're going to add 2.
Sure, I'll go last. Go.
Okay. I'm going to put I would love to put the Jimbo Fisher play call, but I'm not going to, because at the end of the day, the more that I get away from the game, I realize like it's a young team and, boy, was that a bad play call. But my shit list is going to be the way our brains are wired as college football fans, because all rationale goes out the window. Everything you know about what you're supposed to see happen goes out the window. Your heart rate gets up. And my shit list is that because we always like to use the Men in Black analogy. I must have been Men in Black at some point in this gambling house today, because I literally was I was in tears outside after that Alabama A&M game, probably the hormones. But because my brain is wired to expect that A&M should have won that game tonight, it's bullshit. It's bullshit for every fan base out there that has hope when they shouldn't, that has way too much hope, and then you fall down. Our brains are mad at us. Brandon Walker, my brain is my shit list.
Jack Mack, you got a shit list?
Yes, of course I have a shit list, and I think we're gonna giving it to this podcast. Like, we do this thing where we just love to talk shit about top tier teams, and then when they take care of business, we don't say a fucking word. Georgia won 42-10 today, covered the spread, and I just wanted to give the shit list to us and shout out to the dogs. They came out barking today, and
self-awareness.
So, yeah. No. Well, that's certainly a move. I had a death in the family this week, so yeah. Go ahead and put me in there. Go ahead and give me the shit list. That's fine, Jack. Yeah, that's a really classy move on your part. This motherfucking guy. What's your name? Katie Stats shit list.
Everyone in like Notre Dame fan base and nationally, I think who shat on Manti Te'o. He's been to 2 games now. I think he's kind of having a whole reunion. It's just so heartwarming. Like, I know what the story was before my time, but just seeing him there, like at the game, it's just like good for him. I'm excited to see him kind of like more involved in the program, and he deserves it.
All right, I have 2. I will go for the first one. Is going to be a little unexpected for you guys because it is a team that had a huge win today, and they're legit and it's fun. But I got to talk to UCLA's fans right now because UCLA hosted a game today out there in California, and they hosted the number 11 team in the country. They're undefeated, and they were hosting the defending Pac-12 champions, and there was still nobody there. It was empty. It was cavernous. It was awful. You have a terrific team. You are having a nationally televised game against the defending Pac-12 champions, the biggest win you've had in the last decade, and nobody was there to see it. I know you have a fan base because I go to basketball games. I know you're out there, and don't give me that bullshit excuse, oh, it's California, there's plenty of stuff to do. Guess what's awesome to do in October? Go to a top 15 matchup with undefeated team at your home place. That's what's awesome to do. You're not going to the beach. You're not going to some party. You need to go to a top 15 matchup with an undefeated team. You need to do that. That was pathetic, UCLA fans. Number two.
Jack pointed this out. They covered up seats. They put tarps in the seats to help hide the fact that there weren't people in it.
Yes. Number two, Arkansas fans, it's been a long, long road between you and I ate a lot of shit along that road. I watched as your coach that you hired from Georgia a couple of years ago had a bad first year, and you guys acted like he was great. He goes 8-4 last year, and I have to pretend that he is some god among men as coaches. But I knew that this team coming in, your quarterback wasn't very good. You have no weapons at receiver. Your defense kind of stinks. And I told you, and what'd you tell me? I'm a moron from Mississippi. My wife's you told me all these crazy things that I'm just stupid. I'm the worst person you've ever met. Yada, 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 hog door, hog door, hog door. Well, guess what? You walked into Starkville today and you got your fucking ass whipped. And not because your backup quarterback was in, not because KJ Jefferson was on the sideline. You know why? Because you're not a very good football team, because your team has a bad defense, you have no weapons, and your quarterback, by the way, who you think would have saved you, he stinks too. And I am going to take a victory lap because I told you last week it was going to happen, and it happened. Now you just have to take it. I took it last year when they gave you a bogus victory over us on a bad ref's decision. I took it. I let all of you say what you were going to say, and now the Rabbits got the gun. Brandon Walker 1, Arkansas 0. I told you 3 weeks ago you'd lose the next 4. I'll see you next week, motherfuckers. All right. That is my shit list. That is unnecessary roughness. Anybody have anything to add?
Mic drop it, baby.
On Tuesday, we'll get into an incredible slate for next week. And the because list returns for 2022. That is unnecessary roughness.